Welcome everybody to Globe Summit, Dressed for Success with the iconic two-time Oscar winner, Massachusetts' own Ruth Carter. I am Janae Osterheld, Boston Globe founder of A Beautiful Resistance and deputy managing editor of Talent, Culture, and Development. And don't you all look so beautiful today? Hello, Ruth. How are you?
Hey there, I'm doing well. How are you? I love your look today. Your hair is outstanding.
You know I did it just for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You have to do a twirl at the end.
You know, you and I have something in common. You went to Hampton. I went to Norfolk State University,
Of
HBCU
course.
graduates.
All right, let's hear from HBCUs.
What made you choose an HBCU?
Oh, Hampton was a family school, and my cousins were there, my aunt and uncle. My uncle was head of fiscal affairs and treasury there. And so every summer, when my mother went back to Virginia and she brought her kids, we knew about Hampton. You know, Hampton was a family school. And so it was the only school I applied to go to. Because they were all encouraging me, come to Hampton, come to Hampton. So I did.
And it was at Hampton, if I'm not mistaken, that you started on this journey of costume making.
I did. I was 2 years in already. I was a junior when I changed my major to theater. So that was kind of late in my college years, and I was trying to be an actress. And my mom used to say, "Oh, does that mean you're going to do like the news?" And I was like, "No, I want to be on the stage." And I thought I was pretty good. But I didn't make a part when I auditioned, and the director said, "You know what, you want to do the costumes?" So I thought, "Oh, okay, like the consolation prize." But then I found out that I could examine every character in the play, not just one. And it opened up my world. And before long, I was a costume designer on campus, and I was doing, the step shows. I was doing one woman shows. I was doing all the plays. I was that girl.
You are still that girl. Um, you know, I feel like since I've lived in Boston and Massachusetts, and this has become my home, I am a Roxbury representer now. I have noticed that people who don't live in New England and are from here are always shocked when you are Black and from Massachusetts and Black from New England and Black or from Boston. It's always like, oh my gosh, but we're here. And so can you talk a little bit about how growing up here shaped who you are?
Hey, listen, you may not think we're there, but we're there and we're woke. The experiences that I had growing up were in programs that were led by Amherst College, Black Student Union, Black students at UMass and Northeastern and BU. And they were all about imparting some knowledge about culture, about your history. They were about sharing and giving back. And, I was in a program called Uhuru Sasa. That was at Amherst College. I mean, there were so many great programs. I learned about Kwanzaa and, I learned Kiswahili and, about the last poets. And we were doing recitals, speaking poetry and doing dance and theater. That was my experience growing up in Massachusetts, that it was definitely about being immersed in culture and being aware of it. So by the time I went down south to Virginia, it was a little bit different. It was a little dark and lovely. There was like this Black bourgeoisie hierarchy. And I brought my Bob Marley t-shirt and my bicycle. And I was thinking I was going to do college the same way I had experienced the college students who were educating me as a high school student. But it was a little bit different.
And what you just described is what it means to be seen, like what it means to see and what it means to be seen. And you still do so much of that for us. I know everybody loves to celebrate Black Panther and Wakanda, and we'll get to that. But I want to talk about School Days. I want to talk about Do the Right Thing. I want to talk about Malcolm X because as a small child, those Spike Lee films and the way you dress those characters made me, as like an elementary school kid, feel very seen and very inspired and very empowered to one day go to a HBCU, to comfortably rock my bamboo earrings. Like, all of those things matter. The love-hate rings that Radio Raheem, like, you did that. That's all part of who you are in our history, and how fashion has always been beautiful Black armor for us. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Spike in those films and what it means to kind of take lived Black experiences and express it through fashion?
Oh, yeah. Listen, when we all got together with Spike, it was about representation because, at that time, late 80s, early 90s, we were not seeing images on film that we felt represented us, represented our community, represented our stories. And Spike felt that it was very important that what we projected was a reflection of what our feelings and our stories, and that there was a need to show the different hues of Black people in a beautiful way. And so that was kind of the way that we approached our films as far as fashion, and in Jungle Fever, we had all the hues, and we really worked hard to find the colors in the clothes and the textures that really accentuated, the beauty. It was about beauty, and I think that's something that we really worked on to, redirect what we weren't seeing to something that exists amongst us. And, I applaud Spike for having that vision, from the very beginning, from School Days to even if the stories like School Days is kind of a dark story when you really look at it, but it does have a reflection of college life, Black college life. And you think of Do the Right Thing, and you're like telling the story about Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. It does have a color palette to it. You think of Mo Better Blues and all of the, beautiful hues amongst the fashions. All of it had an aesthetic that we were very conscious of the way that we presented it.
And then you go and do something like BAPS, which for me is a favorite. It's like a guilty pleasure. I don't know, I don't even feel guilty about it. It's a favorite. And the way you dressed Halle Berry and both characters in such extravagant, like bold colors, with even the hairstyling that the hairstylist did with the deep finger waves and the just everything that is like what back then we would call ghetto fabulous, like hood rich. And I have this thing called A Beautiful Resistance, which is all about celebrating our beauty and joy as a resistance. So for me, a movie like BAPS and the trajectory of it is a comedy, but seeing them celebrated and like glorified in this very beautiful way that is so extra, and extra isn't a problem, extra is like a yes, is a moment of joy and a moment of resistance that says things that come from our culture aren't good enough. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration when you were dressing them?
Yes, BAPS was directed by Robert Townsend. And at the time, I was a bi-coastal costume designer. I went back and forth between Los Angeles and New York, working with Spike in New York, coming out to Los Angeles and working for Robert Townsend or Keenan Ivory Wayans. And it was a very different aesthetic amongst the filmmakers that I worked out with here in Los Angeles, because they were doing comedies. And Robert was very immersive. This is independent film. He would do a whole book, a whole manual on like, this is the scene, this is how it looks, this is what I want the costume to feel like or to look like. And he had like all of these notes, and I would like read this, like it was thick. It was like a big manual of what he envisioned, so everybody would be on the same page. At the same time, there were elements of BAPS and of like you say, Ghetto Fabulous, that I wanted to make sure, was there and actually in heightened so that they would have an arc by the time they got into Hollywood and they started changing their look, that we would actually kind of see it go from one thing to the next. So Hallie's inspiration for that cat suit, that orange cat suit, had everything to do with that bidet scene. The bidet scene where the water is spewing out everywhere. I thought, what would be funnier if she just cannot hold herself steady because she's in this rubber cat suit and she's slipping all over the place. And so that's why I made it out of that fabric. And it was hard to wear because she had to wear it for a long time. And we had to give her breaks and pull it off and let her cool down, so what looks like it's simple, it was not simple at all.
What is it about fashion that gives you joy?
Oh, because it's storytelling. I think that we make decisions every day when we get dressed and do our hair. And, we're always thinking about what color enhances our skin, what representation you want to have today. We're thinking about like how people will interact with you. And that part of it is storytelling. When you look back in history at a time in the 40s or in the 20s, you go, oh, they really loved beaded dresses in the 20s or in the 50s. Oh, they really love those full skirts, those full circle skirts, and it's so chic with the Dior, and we're going to tell a story too. When people look back at this time, we're going to be telling a story about fashion. It may be Afrofuture, it may be empowerment and pride. We may see more of that story when we think of this time in fashion moving forward.
And I'm glad you brought up Afrofuturism. Your name has become so embedded in conversations around Afrofuturism, just almost as much as Octavia Butler. And so much of that has to do with Black Panther and the world of Wakanda and the way you have been able to really create both realistic royalty and regality with imagined empowerment and liberation for us in the future, which is very much kind of the purpose of Afrofuturism. Can you talk about how Black Panther inspired you and how that work has gone on to become something far bigger than any of us could have imagined?
Yes. When we first got the script, when I first got the script for Black Panther, the first film, there was an energy to it. We knew that we were telling a story about a place. It might have been fictitious, Wakanda, but it was made up of real elements of tribes, and that we were going to have this opportunity to tell this story about African culture pre-colonization. So that was super exciting, and to actually be able to go into the different tribes of Africa and pull out those aesthetics of beauty and reimagine them for a fictitious model and add technology and style to it was a huge opportunity. But it was not proven. There was no Black Panther before us. And so we had we had a tall order in front of us to be imaginative, to be creative, and also to be original and still believe in it. Because I really believe that we all, the cast, Ryan Coogler, Hannah Beekler, myself, we believed in the story. And I think that heart and soul went into the work.
It definitely did, and I think everyone felt it. I mean, not one, but two Oscars. um, what is it like for you during those moments when they call your name? Because that wasn't your first time being neither of those times were your first time being nominated. So what was it like when it was like your name was called not just as a nominee but as the winner?
Well, I felt a real sense of bringing the culture with me to the stage. And Unlike the first time I was nominated for Malcolm X, it was big for me because it was about Malcolm X's life, and it was groundbreaking because I was the first to be nominated. So, it had its celebration as well, but the um, the first win, bringing Marvel their first Oscar, bringing costume design for a Black woman its first Oscar, was nerve-wracking, I gotta say, but joyous. Now we're bringing another one, and I just felt like a sense of like I was really doing what I set out to do, and that was to create clothes for a culture that we wanted to represent with as much authenticity as possible. And it was celebrated by everyone.
We have an audience question. Do you feel like fashion and aesthetic has changed since the pandemic?
Since the pandemic, I think because people are working more at home, we're isolated a little bit more, even though, we've got all the vaccines and, things have opened up. I think there's like this new idea about how we get our work done. And therefore, like, we don't have to dress from the waist down, but honestly, it's leisure. It's things are much more leisure. So when you do go somewhere where you're dressed up, it's even more of an occasion, like I think athleisure wear is like, at an all-time high.
Um, we're winding down to our last minute, so I'm going to close with the question I ask everybody, which is what makes your life a beautiful resistance?
I think that my life is me doing what I love, pursuing a career that I could do every day and never feel like work. And at the same time, it makes an impact. So I feel like that is beautiful and resistance.
You are a beautiful resistance indeed, Miss Ruth Carter. I am so grateful to have been in community and conversation with you. I hope this is not our last time.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for being with us.
I appreciate this time.